First, we look at Form 4, Chapter 1, which is Quadratic Functions and Equations. Yeah, don't need to look at any book, just look at what I display. And yeah, just listen for a bit. Okay, no need to write down also. If you want, you can write down a bit of notes, but yeah, if you don't want to write down, it's fine also. You can just watch my replay of the video. So for Form 4, Chapter 1, Quadratic Functions and Equations, in this whole chapter is all about the quadratic. Yeah, your ax squared plus bx plus c. So what we need to know in this chapter is, of course, putting your equations in the general form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And then what does your A, B, and C tell you? Your A tells you the shape of graph, U shape or N shape. When the magnitude is bigger, it will be more narrow because you will basically get taller or shorter. It's like shorter but more wider, or more narrow and taller. Yeah. Okay, magnitude higher basically gets taller. That's why it's more narrow. Then the B value tells you whether it's on the left or on the right. So when it's negative value, it will be on the right. The middle part will be on the right. When it's positive value, it will be on the left for U-shaped curve. But for N-shaped curve, it will be the opposite way. Okay, if your A is negative, N-shaped positive will be on the right, negative will be on the left. Yeah. And C value is just the y-intercept. Okay. Then your axis of symmetry will always be x equals negative b over 2a. Okay, negative b over 2a. This is not given to you. Advisable to memorize this one. X equals, axis of symmetry, x equals negative b over 2a. Just remember that. And then, of course, solving your quadratic, whether it's solving by factorization, basically. That one you have to know. Basically, make sure you know how to factorize. And when it's equals 0, either one of the bracket must be equals 0. Then, other than that is sketching your quadratic function. So sketching quadratic function, basically we have to look at the A value to know the shape, whether it's U shape or N shape. And then we just look for the X and Y intercept. Y intercept is your C. X intercept is when your Y is equal to 0. So we factorize and find the roots. And then, of course, you need to know your maximum or minimum point also, which you can use the x values because it's right in the middle, or you can use negative b over 2a. Either way is fine. Okay. Yeah. Other than that, it's just solving. Basically that's for Chapter 1. Okay, Form 4, Chapter 1. It's just solving your quadratic equations, sketching the graph, and also the values of maximum, minimum point, and then the values of your A, B, and C. What do they tell you? Yeah, just these few things. Okay, Then Form 4, Chapter 2 is number bases. So in the chapter number bases, you need to know how to put in your expanded notation form, as well as changing to your base 10. Okay. Yeah. Okay, start from right, power 0, power 0, power 1, power 2, power 3. How many of the base to that specific power, or add together. And you get your base 10 number, which is your decimal number. Then once we get the base 10, you need to know how to convert from your base 10 to any other base. So any base is just dividing by that base that we want to convert to, and get all the remainder from bottom to top. Okay, make sure you know that. Then we also need to add and subtract in different bases. Sometimes we may need to convert first before we add and subtract. So make sure you know what base do you want it to end up in. If let's say in base 10, then convert everything to base 10 first. If in base 8, convert everything to base 8 first. Yeah. Of course, addition and subtraction of different bases, you can use vertical addition, vertical subtraction. And then also, your calculator has base numbers. Okay, just press mode until you see base. Select that one. To change between the bases, is these 4 buttons. But we only have decimal, your base 10, hexadecimal, base 16, binary, base 2, and octal, base 8. Yeah. Okay, so only if it's involving these few bases that we can use calculator. Yeah. So base 2 and base 8, you can convert. There's a direct conversion, but you don't need to remember that since you can use calculator. So it's only base 3 to 9, between 3 and 9, because 3 square is 9, and 2 with 4, 2 square is 4. 2 digits in base 2 is 1 digit in base 4, 2 digits in base 3 is 1 digit in base 9. Yeah, so they can convert directly. But if you really have problems doing that, you can convert to base 10 and then convert. Like 3 to 9, you can convert to base 10 and then base 9 also. But there will be no working marks for that because it's a 1-mark question. So there's no need for any working to convert base 3 between 3 and 9 or between base 2 and base 4. There will only be answer marks for that. So whatever method you use actually doesn't really matter. But direct conversion is faster. But if you want to convert to base 10 first, it's fine because there's no working marks. So it doesn't matter what working you use. Yeah. Okay. If it's addition and subtraction in base 2 or base 8, it's okay to use calculator also. Yeah. Because base 2 has a lot of digits, so sometimes maybe using calculator would have less chances of careless mistake. Okay. Yeah, basically that's for chapter 2. Just converting between different bases. Okay, through base 10 and then to whatever base. And also addition and subtraction in your different bases. It's just these 2 things actually, mainly. Yeah, and of course your expanded notation form. You should be familiar with that. Then, Form 4, Chapter 3. Yeah, it's kind of lagging. Let me reopen. So chapter 3 is logical reasoning. So in this chapter, there's not much calculations involved. It's more on the format of it. So yeah, it's more important to familiarize with the format and probably the marking scheme, what they are looking for. So you know how you want to put it in. Okay. Even if there's you don't remember those, actually, even if you answer by logic, most of it shouldn't be difficult as well. Okay, like they'll ask whether something is a statement or not. Yeah, whether a statement is true or false. Yeah, so those you can answer logically. Okay, yeah, statement or not is just whether you can say it's true or false. If you can say it's true, you can say it's false, means it's a statement. Okay. Then there's quantifiers, all or some. All means no exceptions. Some means there are exceptions, at least one exception. Okay. Then we have negation of your statements. Not. Yeah, means by using not something, we change the truth value of your statement, either from false to true or true to false. Yeah, like all triangles have 3 equal sides, I change to not all triangles have 3 equal sides. Yeah, like that. Then we can combine statements using and or. Okay, so just need to remember the true or false value for and or all statements. And statements, as long as one of it is false, the whole thing is false. Or statement, as long as one of it is true, then the whole thing is true. Okay. Yeah. Then we have implications. Implications is if-then statements. If something, then something. The first one is your antecedent. The second one is your consequent. If your antecedent happen, then the consequent will be what? Yeah, it's like consequences. So common question would be this one. Writing 2 implications from your if and only if statement. So compound statement, if and only if statement. Yeah. If this I put as P, this I put as Q, then the 2 statements will be if P then Q, the other one will be if Q then P. Basically switch the antecedent and consequent. Common question. Either splitting from this to the 2 statements or from the 2 implications to the compound statement. Yeah. Okay, make sure you know how to do that. Then after that we have converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Yeah, I would say quite likely for them to ask also. Okay, converse, inverse, contrapositive would be a very crucial one. So if my statement is if P then Q, converse would be switching the antecedent and consequent, means if Q then P. Inverse would be negating the statement. If not P, then not Q. And contrapositive is the combination of both. Means if not Q, then not P. Switching antecedent and consequent and also negating them. Yeah. So these two will have the same truth value. If statement is true, contrapositive true. If statement is false, contrapositive false. Converse and inverse will be the same. If converse is true, inverse is true. Converse is false, inverse is false. Okay. Then arguments, make sure you know all the different forms of arguments. There are 3 forms. Or something is something or have something. Then premise 2, an object is that. So an object will fulfill the criteria. Yeah. Okay. The other form is if P then Q, P is true, so Q is true. The other one, form 3, is the contrapositive, means if P then Q, if Q is not true, P is not true. Not Q, then not P. Yeah, following contrapositive. These are the 3 forms of arguments. So, looking at the arguments, we can say whether an argument is valid or not valid, sound or not sound. Valid or not valid is just looking at the format. The format is correct, follows either form 1, form 2, or form 3, then it's valid. Sound or not is whether or not all of it is correct. Like here is valid, format is correct, but this one is false. Premise 2 is false, so it's not sound. Yeah, that's how it works. Okay, then inductive argument means based on a few premises, we conclude and see the pattern whether or not it's true. Yeah, whether or not it's correct. So argument strong or weak is assuming that all the premise is true, whether the conclusion is likely to be true or not. Not whether it's true or not, but whether it's likely to be true or not. Yeah. So if it's not likely, then it's weak. If it's likely, then it's strong. Okay. Cogent or not cogent is whether or not everything is true or false. Like this one actually is strong. It's not weak. Yeah, I made a mistake here. This one should be strong. Yeah, like this, all odd numbers, and it's all prime numbers. So it leads to all prime numbers are odd numbers. But yeah, actually it's not. This one is false because 2 is also a prime number and it's not an odd number. So it's strong but not cogent. Yeah. That's how it works. And of course, from a general rule, you can form the sequence of a pattern. Yeah, then we just conclude that the pattern that it shows. Yeah, that's for induction of patterns, number patterns. So yeah, that's for chapter 3, logical reasoning. Then we look at form 4, chapter 4, operations on sets. Okay. Operations on sets, what we need to know is, of course, drawing your Venn diagram. Okay, then we need to know your intersection and union of sets. Intersection means where it's inside all the intersections, like A intersect B intersect C, where all of them overlap one another. Union is just combination of all of it, like they plus together. So when there's plus times or and union intersect, that's a keyword. Or leads to union and leads to intersect. So yeah, you should know your union intersects. If you want to find the shaded region, consider part by part, like K intersect M. We highlight the whole K intersect M first. For example, like this. Whole K intersect M is here. Then consider out of this, intersect L complement. Means out of all these, which part intersects with L complement? Means complement means outside. So outside of L is only here. Yeah, so I only consider this part and I erase off the part that doesn't intersect. That's how it works. If it's union, then we just add on the part that I want to union with. Okay. If we want to fill in the number of elements in each part, okay, I always consider the intersection part first. Always consider the intersection part first if it's empty. Always look at the part that intersects, then only we consider the rest. If we already have, then it's okay lah. But if we don't have, then always try to fill in the part that intersects first. Yeah, then only work your way out. If we don't know, cannot fill in, just leave it as X. Yeah, then put everything else in terms of X as well. Okay. Yeah, something like this. If I don't know, then I put X. Then the whole thing is 21. So here 21 minus X, whole thing 13, 13 minus X like that. Then you equate the whole thing to find the value of X. Then you know what's in each part of it. Yeah, that's quite common as well. So yeah, that's for chapter 4. Then chapter 5. Form 4, chapter 5 is network in graph theory. Sorry, I'm lagging. Yeah. For chapter 5, network and graph theory. For network and graph theory, mainly what you need to know is listing out your edges and vertices. Yeah. Vertex pairs. Yeah, that's very common. Which vertex and which vertex creates the edges. Yeah, the same one, like this one, E1 and E2 has 2. So V1, V2, V1, V2, we have to write twice. Make sure you don't only write once for multiple edges. Then directed, undirected, weighted, and directed and weighted graphs. Okay, make sure you know how they link to each other. Must follow the direction of the arrow. Weighted, how to use the weightage to determine like shortest distance, longest distance, and all. Yeah, that is probably something that is likely for them to ask. Then subgraph and trees. Subgraph, not likely for them to really ask. But trees, I would say trees is a good question to ask. So yeah, make sure you know what are trees. Basically, trees cannot have any loop. Okay. Like if I connect like this is a loop. These 4 points create a loop. It can keep going on and on. Branches like that is a tree. And all the points must be connected. Like this one, this, and the K and J are not connected to each other. So it's not a tree. Okay. Then other than that will be the degree of your vertices. They can ask you for degree of specific vertices, or they can ask you sum of degrees. Yeah, sum of degrees of your vertices or degree of each vertex. Sum of degrees will always be 2 times the number of edges, no matter what type of graph it is. Yeah, that you can remember. Yeah, mainly it's just like that. And sometimes we may need to draw the graph out. Okay, that one, if you're not familiar, then it's just, you can just practice. Yeah, it's just by logic. There's not really a special way to do it. Yeah, that's for chapter 5. Chapter 6, linear inequalities. You're revising linear inequalities. Actually, you can just focus on the long questions. Yeah, because long questions will include everything. Forming your inequalities, drawing out, and also shading the region. Yeah, and then from the shaded region, determine like maximum, minimum values. So if it's not the long question like this, then it will be mainly about the shaded region, which we determine by looking at whether it's above or below compared to a Y, more above, less below. Yeah. If there's equal, solid line, no equals, dotted lines. Yeah. Then based on shaded region, usually we can find like maximum, minimum value. For example, maximum Y value here. Then highest you can be is here, which is 9. So you cannot go higher than 9. If it's like minimum value, let's say like this one, I want minimum value of Y. And minimum value of Y, it cannot be 6. It's lower than 7, but usually we need rounded numbers. So we just take 7. Yeah, that's how it works. So yeah, that is basically what it is for chapter 6. Graphs of motion, chapter 7. So there's only 2 types of graph in this chapter. One is distance against time, and the other one is speed against time. So for distance against time graph, we can find the total distance. If it goes like different ways, then we have to add the distance that it goes away. Let's say here is 7. Let's say here is 2. So it's 7 plus here. From 7 to 2 means 5. 7 plus 5, 12. So 12. Yeah, distance is 12. Depending on what unit here is. If here is meters, then meters. If here cm, then cm. Km, then km. Yeah, so like this one, then it's 12 meters. If it's horizontal line, means it's not moving, at rest. Then if I want speed, then it's the gradient. Yeah, means change in distance over the change in time. For both of them, I can find average speed, which is always total distance over total time. And for speed against time graph, horizontal line means constant speed. It doesn't mean it's not moving, it's just constant speed. Not moving means speed is 0. Yeah. So if say I have something like this, when I find the gradient, I'm finding the acceleration, or I can also call it rate of change of speed. Yeah. Okay. Then the area under the graph would be the distance. So if I want to find the area, I always have to split into areas that I can find. Means, for example, like this trapezium, trapezium, triangle. Then add all together, I get the total distance. Yeah. So if I want to find average speed, then I have to find the total distance first, then divide by the total time. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the whole chapter is just about these few things. That's chapter 7. Chapter 8. Measures of dispersion. Okay. Measures of dispersion for ungrouped data. So in Form 5, there will be a chapter called Measures of Dispersion for Group Data. Yeah. So a lot of parts will be very much similar in a sense. So I don't think there's a need to recap too much for this chapter, but basically it's just about the different types of measures of dispersion, which is your different quartiles, interquartile range, your range, highest minus lowest value. Since you need to find your interquartile range, means you need to know how to find your quartiles, and naturally your median as well. Because they may ask you to draw a box plot. Box plot uses lowest value, highest value, first quartile, third quartile, and also your median. So all these values need to be known. Yeah. Of course, you need to find your mean as well, because inside your standard deviation or variance formula, that's your mean. Yeah. So that is also something you need to know. Stem and leaf diagram, also you need to know how to draw. Dot plot as well. Dot plot, I think it's quite straightforward. Yeah. Then range, also straightforward. Interquartile range, as long as you know how to find first quartile to quartile median, interquartile range should be no problem. It's just the upper quartile or third quartile minus the lower quartile or first quartile. Variance and standard deviation, if you want to find, it's just following the formula. Formula is given, no need to memorize. Most important is you know how to use the formula. Okay. Yeah, then other than that, I think there's nothing much. Okay. Yeah, so box plot. Yeah, other than that, nothing much. Oh, also the concept of outliers. But outliers. Actually, no, the outliers is not for here. More to central tendency. Yeah, actually nothing much other than that. Okay, if it's combining two sets of data, make sure you combine from the sum of values and the sum of values square. Okay, don't change from the median itself or don't change from the standard deviation itself. Okay, chapter 9 is probability of combined events. Very simple chapter also. Mainly see there is even the formula in your formula sheet for probability. NA over NS. S is your sample space. Yeah, number of outcomes for event A, the number of outcomes in your sample space. And total probability must be 1. Yeah. So basically it's just by using these two that we find all the different probability. And of course you need to know how to draw the tree diagram as well, probability tree diagram. And then there's your mutually exclusive and non-mutually exclusive events. Mutually exclusive, there is no common outcomes at all. Means outcomes do not intersect, no intersection. And non-mutually exclusive means they have common outcomes. And then independent and dependent probability. Dependent probability, make sure you change your second probability according to what happens first. Means like if I draw without replacement, make sure your total will minus. How many left will minus? Yeah. And now of course complement probability. Means 1 minus the probability of it happening. Probability of not happening be 1 minus probability of something happening. Okay, that's for chapter 9. And chapter 10. Financial management. So in this chapter, important things will be your SMART financial goals, SMART, make sure you know. Quite likely for them to ask in exams. Evaluation of your financial status, basically looking at your net worth. Net worth is assets, total assets minus total liability. So make sure you know what constitutes an asset, what constitutes a liability. Asset is what you own, liability is what you owe. Yeah. And when you minus, you get the net worth. Yeah. So net worth is not how much cash you have, it's just how much of the things you own minus how much you owe people. Make sure you know how to calculate monthly cash flow, drawing up financial plans. Then, yeah, financial plan will most likely be something that they'll ask also. Then, comparing financial plan, I think it's quite simple. Okay. Evaluate whether it's feasible or not also should be quite logical. Then long-term financial plans. If you want to see whether it's possible or not, basically just see if the amount that needs to be saved per month is possible or not. Basically just divide by number of months, the total amount that needs to be saved. So what affects the financial goal is just these three. It's always these three: inflation, interest rate, and personal health. Yeah. So that you might want to remember. And then, yeah, that's basically about it. Yeah. So, yeah, there's not too much on chapter 8 as well. Sorry, on chapter 10 as well. This is chapter 10. So, you see the whole 10 chapters in Form 4. If we just look at one chapter by one chapter, there's not too much. Yeah, there's not too much to actually look at. Yeah, once you already understand and have went through the chapters before. Okay, when it starts anew, it takes the whole year because you're not familiar with it. But actually, when you already have an idea of each chapter, to actually revise all 10 chapters wouldn't take too long. Yeah. So assuming if the SPM goes back to end of the year, if you start now, just revise 2 chapters a month. Yeah, you'll be able to bridge the last chapter with time to spare. Even if you include Form 5 chapters, you do 2 chapters a month, I think 2.5 chapters a month maybe, then by SPM shouldn't be an issue as well. Yeah, and you don't even need to spend a lot of time on it. Give or take 2 hours per chapter. I'm not talking 2 hours in one day. I'm talking about 2 hours in 1 month. Yeah, 2 hours per chapter in 1 month. Means in 1 month you need to spend maybe 4 to 5 hours. Yeah, then you can pretty much already familiarize with every single chapter. Then when you revise again near the exam, maybe it takes like 20 minutes per chapter. Yeah, 15-20 minutes per chapter. So yeah, do try to work on it earlier. Yeah, just focus on what I mentioned to you. You don't need to actually do like every single question kind of thing. Focus more on exam-oriented type of questions if you're practicing.